Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appeared before the Senate Commerce Committee today.
And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children.
RFK is the nominee for that position. Democrat senators were ruthless in their attacks against Kennedy, beginning with Ron Wyden of Oregon.
He has made it his life's work
to help America's
sow
children.
doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power.
And Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts seemed to lose it when Kennedy called her out for trying to get him to commit to not suing pharmaceutical companies.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
you're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
Look.
When he was allowed to speak uninterrupted, RFK assured people he wants to inform them, not restrict their choices.
I don't want to take food away from anybody. If you like a cheeseburger, a McDonald's cheeseburger, a Diet Coke, which my boss loves, and you should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that. But you should know what the impacts are on your family and on your health.
Kennedy's set to be back before senators again tomorrow. Right now, we welcome to Victory News the author of The New Abnormal, The Rise of the Biomedical Security State. He's also a fellow and director of Ethics and Public Policy Center. Dr. Aaron Kheriaty, welcome back to Victory News, sir.
Thanks. Good to be back with you.
All right. RFK Jr. faced a very angry Democrat minority today in his Senate confirmation hearings to become Health and Human Services Secretary. You got to watch this. People, you have to watch this. Watch this strange moment when he's confronted by Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont over infant onesies.
Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with
leadership.
Are you
supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am supportive of vaccines. I will. I want good science.
Okay, he wants good science. I don't know about the whole onesies thing, Doctor. I'm going to just toss it to you. Go.
Yeah, so despite the shrill and sometimes even comical rhetoric from some of the senators who seem to have lost their heads when talking about vaccines, Kennedy's position on vaccines has been very clear. He wants more and better research. He is correct when he said that there have been no randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials of any of the vaccines on the childhood vaccine schedule. That is the gold standard of medical research. Instead, we have what are called observational studies. RFK wants randomized controlled trials for vaccines, which is entirely sensible, so that we can learn more about their safety and efficacy. He wants them to be tested in various combinations because of all the vaccines that our children get. None of them have actually been tested in combination with any of the others to look at things like drug-drug interactions. And the final thing he wants, which I think is the most important thing, we can almost bracket debates and questions about safety and efficacy of vaccines if we just take the policy position that the liability protections for big pharma when it comes to vaccines should be removed. Big pharma got a special carve out in the 1980s, specifically and only for vaccines that they don't have for their medications. So if Vioxx harms you, you can sue the manufacturer for those harms if those harms should have been picked up in the clinical trials or they were covered up. With vaccines, we have a special carve-out that doesn't allow consumer protection, which is ensured by liability. I think if you straighten that out, the lawyers will take care of the rest, and the pharmaceutical companies will do much better safety and efficacy studies, knowing that they're going to be liable.
That's what I believe Senator Warren and he were arguing about there. But I guarantee you this. They've sold out of those onesies. You wrote a book. You wrote a book entitled "The New Abnormal" about technocrats abusing power. I want you to listen to globalist John Kerry explain how our U.S. Constitution is blocking government from censoring disinformation. Here it is.
If people go to only one source, and the source they go to is sick, and has an agenda, and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
Recently, you said the COVID crisis was a massive acceleration of authoritarian trends, advancing censorship and propaganda. It sounds like John Kerry and government barely can get honest communications. What's your response, Doctor?
Of course, this is nonsense. The government has all the power it's ever had to promote its own speech, to advance its own ideas. It has the bully pulpit. What it can't do is prevent ordinary citizens from speaking. And that's what it has been doing for the last 4 years. That's why we challenged government censorship in our Missouri v. Biden case, my co-plaintiffs and I, Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff, and others. And that's why Trump, on his first day in office, signed an executive order restoring free speech, acknowledging that the federal government, for the last at least 4 years, has been pressuring social media companies to kick people off, to deplatform people when their speech contradicted the government's preferred narrative. And this is clearly unconstitutional.
Yeah. Now, to get your own copy of The New Abnormal, just visit Amazon.com or your favorite bookseller. Dr. Cariotti, thank you so much for the information you bring us and for being with us today.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announced today he was pausing rate cuts at the current 4.25 to 4.5%.
Right now, we feel like we're in a very good place. Policy is well positioned. The economy is in quite a good place, actually, as well. And what we do expect is to see further progress on inflation. And, as I mentioned, as we see that, or if we were to see weakening in the labor market, that could foster, we could then be in a position of making further adjustments.
The Fed chair also stated they are watching what happens with potential tariffs. A federal judge on Tuesday paused the Trump administration's Office of Management and Budget's funding freeze on various federal loans and grants. D.C. U.S. District Judge Lauren Laken, a Biden appointee, imposed the temporary administrative stay on the freeze until February 3rd. A coalition of 22 attorneys general led by New York's Letitia James sued to stop the funding freeze, claiming there is a need to preserve, quote, essential funding. During her first briefing, White House press briefing, Secretary Caroline Leavitt made it clear the pause would not affect Americans' direct assistance. This afternoon, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also posted an update on X saying, quote, this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The president's EOs on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. Mike?
Former President Donald Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act into law today. The first as the 47th president of the United States. The Laken-Riley Act mandates the detainment of illegal immigrants who commit theft or violent crimes. He emphasized Americans would not forget Laken, while noting she brought Democrats and Republicans together in the creation of this bill.
To Laken's family, we will keep Laken's memory alive in our hearts forever, everyone's hearts. With today's action, her name will also live forever in the laws of our country, and this is a very important law. This is something that has brought Democrats and Republicans together. That's not easy to do. Laken did it. Laken did it. America will never, ever forget Laken Hope Riley.
Trump noted several individuals killed by illegal immigrants in the past few years due to lax border security, including Jocelyn Nungary, Sarah Rood, and others. He thanked the House and Senate Republicans who worked to pass the legislation. Then he specifically thanked the 12 Senate and 48 House Democrats who voted to pass this crucial bill.